My grandmother was taking her last breaths, but a protest blocked the road to the hospital, trapping my mother. My desperate plea for passage was met with cold indifference, until the rumble of engines signaled a dangerous, unexpected intervention. The call came like a punch to the gut, stealing the air from my lungs. It was Dr. Evans, his voice gentle but firm, laced with the kind of pity you never want to hear from a doctor. "Imani," he said, "it's time. Your grandmother. She's asking for you, and for your mother. I don't think she has much longer." My world, which was already tilted, spun completely off its axis. Grandma Rose was my rock, the sun my family orbited around. The idea of her light going out was inconceivable. I threw on shoes, grabbed my keys, and was out the door in 30 seconds, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I made it to the hospital in record time, my old sedan groaning in protest. I ran to her room on the 3rd floor, my footsteps echoing in the sterile, quiet hallway. And there she was, small, so much smaller than I remembered, lost in a sea of white sheets and beeping machines. Her breathing was a shallow, ragged whisper. I took her hand, her skin as thin as old parchment, and whispered that I was here, that Mom was on her way. Grandma's eyes fluttered, a faint smile touching her lips. That's when my phone buzzed. It was Mom. "I'm stuck, honey," she said, her voice tight with a panic that mirrored my own. "I'm so close, maybe 5 minutes away from the hospital, but the road is completely blocked. I can't get through." "Blocked? What do you mean blocked? An accident?" "No," she spat the word like it was poison. "It's a protest. Some people are standing in the middle of the road with signs. I can't move." "A protest? Now? Blocking the only road to the hospital?" A cold, white-hot fury I'd never felt before surged through me. I looked at my grandmother, her chest barely rising, and made a decision. "Stay there, Mom. I'm coming." I kissed Grandma Rose's forehead, promising I'd be right back with her daughter, and I ran. I didn't wait for the elevator. I took the stairs 2 at a time, bursting out of the hospital entrance and into the suffocating humidity of the afternoon. I could hear it before I could see it, a cacophony of chanting and car horns. I ran down the long hospital driveway and rounded the corner, and there they were, maybe 30 or 40 people, mostly white, holding pristine picket signs that read, "Protect our property values," and "No shelters here." They were blocking the entire 2-lane road, a human wall of suburban indignation. My mom's blue minivan was about 6 cars back. Trapped. I pushed my way through the line of stopped cars, ignoring the angry shouts of drivers. I finally reached the front, my chest heaving, sweat stinging my eyes. The woman who seemed to be in charge, a blonde with a tight ponytail and expensive-looking yoga pants, was holding a megaphone. I stumbled up to her, gasping for breath. "Please," I begged, "you have to let my mom through. My grandmother is dying in that hospital right now. She's asking for her daughter." The woman, let's call her Brenda, lowered her megaphone and gave me a look of mild annoyance, as if I were a fly buzzing around her picnic. "I'm very sorry for your inconvenience," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "But what we are doing here is extremely important. We can't make exceptions." "An inconvenience," I choked out, disbelief making my voice shake. "This isn't an inconvenience. This is my grandmother's last hour on earth. All she wants is to see her daughter one last time. Please." My plea turned into a sob. Brenda's face hardened. "Look, we all have problems. This is about the community. If we let one car through, we have to let them all through, and that defeats the purpose." She turned her back on me, raising the megaphone to her lips to lead another chant. Desperation clawed at my throat. I was about to start screaming, to physically try and drag these people out of the way, when a new sound cut through the air. It was a low, guttural rumble that vibrated deep in my bones. It grew louder and louder, until a dozen motorcycles, big, gleaming chrome machines, pulled up to the other side of the blockade. The men riding them were huge, clad in leather cuts with a terrifying skull patch on the back. Hell's Angels. They cut their engines, and an unnerving silence fell over the protest. The leader, a mountain of a man with a beard braided with silver rings, and eyes that looked like they'd seen 1,000 storms, swung a leg off his bike. He took a long, slow drag from a cigarette, his gaze sweeping over the scene. He saw Brenda and her picket signs. He saw the long line of trapped cars, and then his eyes landed on me, a tear-streaked, frantic mess. He didn't smile. He didn't scowl. His expression was utterly unreadable. He took another drag, blew a perfect smoke ring, and then he looked right at Brenda. His voice was like gravel and rust. "You're done here." He flicked his cigarette onto the asphalt and turned to the rest of his club. "Shut it down." Brenda, the yoga pants-wearing leader, puffed out her chest. The fear in her eyes was quickly being replaced by indignant rage. "Excuse me," she screeched, her voice cracking through the megaphone, which was now pointed at the biker leader. "Who do you think you are? This is a lawful and peaceful assembly. We have a permit. You can't just come here and intimidate us." The biker leader, whose name I'd later learn was Bear, didn't even flinch. He just took a slow step forward, his heavy boots crunching on the asphalt. His crew fanned out behind him, a silent leather-clad wall. They didn't rev their engines or shout threats. They just stood there, watching. The effect was more chilling than any scream. "Your permit's expired," Bear said, his voice a low rumble that carried easily in the sudden quiet. He gestured with his chin towards me. "This girl's grandmother is dying. You're in the way. Move." It was that simple. A direct order. No room for negotiation. Brenda sputtered. "That's her personal problem. This is about the future of our community. We will not be moved by a bunch of thugs." That was the wrong word to use. A ripple went through the bikers. One of them, a wiry guy with a scar bisecting his eyebrow, took a step forward, but Bear held up a hand, stopping him without even looking. He kept his eyes locked on Brenda. "We can do this the easy way," he said, his voice dropping even lower. "Or we can do this the hard way. I don't care about your property values. I care that this kid," he nodded at me again, "gets to see her family one last time. You have 10 seconds to clear a path." He didn't count. He didn't need to. The sheer, unyielding certainty in his voice was enough. Some of the protesters in the back began to melt away, grabbing their coolers and folding chairs and scurrying back to their SUVs. They hadn't signed up for this. But Brenda and her hardcore contingent held their ground, their faces a mixture of fear and stubborn pride. Bear sighed, a sound of profound disappointment. He looked over at me. "Which one's your mom's car?" My voice was a squeak. I pointed a trembling finger at the blue minivan. The blue one." He gave a curt nod. Then he turned to his men. "All right, one lane, let's go." And just like that, they moved. It was a stunning display of quiet, efficient force. They didn't shove or hit anyone. They simply walked up to the remaining protesters, got right in their personal space, and stood there. Men who looked like they could bench press a small car, stared down accountants and stay-at-home moms. The protesters' signs were gently taken from their hands and neatly stacked on the side of the road. Their human chain dissolved like sugar in water. They scrambled out of the way, tripping over their own feet to avoid the silent giants in leather. Within 60 seconds a path was cleared. A perfect car-wide lane right down the middle of the road. Bear walked into the lane and looked back at my mom's minivan. He raised his arm and gestured for her to come forward. My heart leapt into my throat. It was happening. We were going to make it. My mom, bless her heart, didn't hesitate. She put the van in drive and started creeping forward, navigating the narrow path the bikers had made. The remaining protesters glared, their faces twisted with impotent fury. Brenda was practically vibrating with rage. As my mom's van drew level with us, I ran to the passenger side and yanked the door open, ready to jump in. "Thank you," I mouthed at Bear, tears of gratitude streaming down my face. He just gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. My mom was crying too, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. "Oh, Imani baby, I was so scared." "We're almost there, Mom," I said, 1 foot inside the van. But just as my mom's minivan cleared the last of the blockade, Brenda did something unbelievably stupid. She snapped. With a wild shriek, she threw her megaphone to the ground and launched herself in front of the van, her arms spread wide. "You are not passing," she screamed, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated spite. Before my mom could even hit the brakes, before I could scream, Bear moved faster than I would have thought possible for a man his size. He grabbed Brenda by the arm, not violently, but firmly, and spun her out of the way. But the damage was done. The sudden stop, the commotion, had drawn attention. In the distance I heard it, a sound that made my blood run cold. Sirens. Multiple sirens growing closer and closer. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a frantic, insistent vibration. It was the hospital. Dr. Evans. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped the phone as I answered. His voice was urgent, strained. "Imani, where are you? You need to get back here. Right now." My blood turned to ice. "We're coming," I yelled into the phone, slamming the van door shut. "Mom, go, now!" The approaching sirens were a frantic heartbeat counting down the last seconds of my grandmother's life. Mom floored it, the minivan lurching forward, leaving the chaotic scene behind us. I didn't look back. I couldn't. My world had narrowed to the hospital entrance looming ahead, and the desperate hope that we weren't already too late. We screeched to a halt in the emergency drop-off zone, abandoning the car without a second thought. We ran through the automatic doors, our footsteps echoing a frantic tattoo on the polished floors. The elevator ride felt like an eternity. When the doors finally slid open on the third floor, Dr. Evans was waiting for us, his face etched with sorrow. My heart sank to my feet. "Are we—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "She's still with us," he said, his voice low. "But just barely. She's been holding on. I think she was waiting for you." He ushered us into the room. The beeping of the machines was slower, more erratic. Grandma Rose's eyes were closed, her face peaceful but so pale. My mom rushed to her side, collapsing into the chair and grabbing her hand. "Mama," she sobbed, her voice breaking. "Mama, I'm here. I'm so sorry I'm late. I'm here now." And then, a miracle. Grandma Rose's eyelids fluttered. They opened, just a crack, and her gaze, hazy and distant, found my mother's face. A whisper of a smile touched her lips. "My girl," she breathed. The sound so faint it was more air than voice. She squeezed my mom's hand, a flicker of her old strength returning for just a moment. My mom leaned in, pressing her forehead against her mother's, their tears mingling. I stood at the foot of the bed, my own tears blurring my vision, witnessing this sacred, final goodbye. They stayed like that for a few minutes, a silent conversation of love and farewell passing between them. And then, as quietly as a candle being snuffed out, Grandma Rose was gone. The heart monitor flatlined with a final soul-crushing tone. The grief was a tidal wave, but underneath it, a profound sense of relief. We had made it. Mom got to say goodbye. That last precious moment was a gift, a treasure we would hold on to forever. A gift given to us by a group of unlikely angels in leather vests. After the initial wave of sorrow passed and the nurses had quietly done their work, my mom and I sat in the sterile waiting room, numb and exhausted. I had to go move the van. As I stepped out of the hospital entrance, blinking in the twilight, I saw them. The Hells Angels were still there, their bikes parked in a neat row in the parking lot. They weren't making a scene. They were just waiting. Bear was leaning against his bike, smoking another cigarette. He saw me and pushed himself upright. I walked over, my legs feeling like lead. I didn't know what to say. "How do you thank someone for giving you the world?" "I'm so sorry for your loss," he said, his gravelly voice surprisingly gentle. He looked past me, toward the hospital. "Did you—" "We made it," I whispered, fresh tears welling up. "My mom got to say goodbye. She was waiting for her. Thank you. I don't know how I can ever thank you." He took a long drag from his cigarette and looked up at the sky. "My old lady," he said, his voice thick with an old, deep pain. "She died in this hospital 5 years ago. I was stuck in traffic. An accident up the road. I missed it by 10 minutes. He looked at me then, and for the first time I saw past the intimidating exterior to the man underneath. I saw a pain that mirrored my own family's. Nobody should have to go through that. Nobody. Egg. He told me the police had arrived, and Brenda had tried to press charges for assault and intimidation. But too many other drivers who had been blocked for half an hour spoke up. They told the cops how I had begged, how my grandmother was dying, and how the bikers had only cleared a path. Brenda and her core group ended up with citations for obstructing a public roadway and creating a public nuisance. Their protest had imploded. "Don't worry about them," Bear said, flicking his cigarette away. "Sometimes people gotta be reminded what's actually important." He reached into his vest and pulled out a worn leather wallet. He took out a card and handed it to me. It just had a name, Bear, and a phone number. "If the funeral costs are too much, or if you need anything, and I mean anything at all, you call this number." I stared at the card, then back at him, speechless. He just nodded, then swung his leg over his bike. With a deafening roar, the engines all came to life. One by one, they pulled out of the parking lot and disappeared into the night, leaving me standing there under the hospital lights. They hadn't just cleared a road that day. They had cleared a path for peace, for closure, for a daughter to hold her mother's hand one last time. They were gruff, they were intimidating, but they understood a fundamental truth that Brenda and her signs never could. Property values are temporary, but family is forever.